This is Evelyn, and welcome to another Two Kids interview. Today we are joined by comedian Dan Gabriel. Mr. Gabriel is a headliner who has appeared on Comedy Central, Star Search, The Late Late Show, Comics Unleashed, and more. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I saw you perform last week, and you were hilarious. Are you funny all the time, or just on stage?
I try to just be a normal person the rest of the time. I know a lot of comedian friends of mine who are kind of on all day, and it gets tiring for the people, their families and friends. I remember when I very first started doing comedy, I wasn't getting that much stage time, so I felt the need to always be funny around my friends. And a couple of really good friends of mine had to sit me down and say, "You need to turn it off. You need to be able to just be that sometimes and be a normal person the rest of the time." So I try to separate the two.
What did your family think when you told them you were going to be a comedian?
Um, they were very supportive because it was sort of easy. My sister was a ballerina for 25 years. She was living in New York and she was a ballerina. And she decided to not go to college. And when she was 19, she just moved to New York to follow her dream of doing ballet. I was going to college, and that was my older sister. And I was going to college when I decided I wanted to try comedy. And so I was just going to like little open mic nights and stuff while I was in comedy. So it wasn't as big of a leap as my sister had taken. So it was a lot easier for everybody to accept that I wanted to try this thing because I was just kind of dipping my toe in and seeing if it was something that I could do. And so it was a much easier transition for me. So I think it was pretty easy for my family to accept.
What is your process when writing jokes?
Usually I don't usually sit down and say I'm going to write 10 jokes right now. I mean, I do that sometimes if I have a project or if sometimes I'll be writing jokes for other comedians or other performers, and then I can sit down and try to look at it like it's a homework assignment. But for my own comedy, I just kind of wait until something happens in my life that I can tell the story about or that I can kind of turn into a joke. And then I'll think of the funny thing and I'll usually say it to the person who's sitting next to me. And if it gets a laugh, then I'll write it down and see if I can nurture it into something bigger.
Who do you practice your jokes on?
I uh, Sometimes I will run my jokes by other comedians. Sometimes I'll run my jokes by my wife and kids, but they're not usually the best judge of what's going to work or not. And actually, my dad, I always say that if my dad likes a joke, it's no good.
You said you write jokes for other performers. Anyone interesting?
Um, Nobody like super famous or anything, but sometimes I'll meet other performers on the ship, magicians or ventriloquists or jugglers who will have sort of a concept and ask me to help, tighten the screws on it and make it a little bit funnier. Or if they have like the ventriloquists, sometimes if they have a new puppet that they don't really know what to do with yet, then I'll try to take I'll try to think of a dialogue that they can have with the new character that would be funny.
What's your all-time favorite comedy routine that just keeps making you laugh?
Um, I really love Monty Python. I grew up really loving the Monty Python stuff. So um, Usually I can go back and watch any Monty Python movie or show, and it still gets me. And my kids, I showed Monty Python to my kids, and they love it too. And sometimes I'll come home and they'll be watching it without even me putting it on. Do you guys know what Monty Python is? Okay, well, you have something to look up that when we're done here. But there's a great movie called Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail, and it's very funny. It's very silly, and if it's okay with your parents, you should check it out.
How much of your jokes come from things that your kids do?
A little, a good amount because I like to talk about real life and you know things that are real that have to do with raising kids is hits harder with the audiences because they relate to it. It's something that all the parents are going to understand, and it's the jokes that people really relate to the most are the ones that hit the hardest.
Do your kids know you're making jokes about them?
Yes, they do, and they're fine with it. They actually love it. And the same thing. I have jokes about my wife also, and people will come up to her after and ask if it upsets her, and she was like, "Nope, he's paying the bills with it."
You play April Fool's Day jokes on your family or anyone else?
No, not usually. I mean, because they know it's April 1st, it's hard to get one over on them. But I'll do little things like I'll leave funny notes for them around the house, or I'll leave when they open the fridge, I'll have a photo of something gross waiting for them, or when they go into the bathroom in the morning, it'll be a photo of just something random on the mirror, or something like that. But not usually. I don't go to all the lengths of making the Home Alone house for them or anything.
That's what I do.
You
That
leave
would be
buckets of
cool
paint
though.
you got buckets of paint on the door, on the top of the door, so that when they close it, it falls on them. Or am I just giving you ideas now?
I was actually planning something like that.
Well, I'm sorry if I spoiled the surprise.
It's fine. What was your favorite experience in your career?
Oh, there have been so many. It's hard. It's really hard to pick one, but I guess one that comes to mind is one time I was in a comedy competition that the finals were in Hawaii, and they set up this big stage on the beach in Hawaii, and my grandmother flew out. My little Filipino grandmother flew out from San Francisco, and a lot of family, my mom and my uncles, and they all came out to just visit Hawaii and to support me on the show. And so I got to do this great show on the beach in Hawaii while it was kind of drizzling. And I had a great show. And I looked down and I see my grandmother and my whole family sitting there smiling. And it was I just remember thinking in the moment how magical the whole thing was, because I got the sun setting on the beach in Honolulu, and it's just a little bit drizzling, and it was just a wonderful moment for me to look down and see how proud my grandmother was.
A lot of comedians know each other. Who are a couple of your best comedian friends?
Um, I I have a lot of comedian friends that I started out with. I started comedy in San Francisco, and so a lot of my friends are comedians from San Francisco that you might not have heard of, but they're fantastic comics. And if you want to look them up, you could look them up. Robert Mack is one that comes to mind. He's fantastic. His last name is Mac, Mac, and he's one of my best friends. He lives in Washington D.C. now, but we started comedy together in San Francisco. And who else? Who else? Gary Cannon is a very good friend of mine. That's also very funny, and he lives in Los Angeles now. And he does warm up for a lot of different shows, like the Masked Singer and the Jennifer Hudson show. And we started together in San Francisco, and yeah. So a lot of the guys that aren't necessarily hugely famous, but they're my close friends. I do know people that ended up blowing up and becoming super duper famous. I know, Joe Coy, and I know Ali Wong, and I know Nate Bargatze. But, I just kind of would see them in passing here and there when we were first starting out. But now they're so gigantic that we're not hanging out as much as we used to. But when I do see those people, it's still, it's wonderful to see them, and it's all hellos and hugs and catching up. But, everybody's really busy. So
What advice do you have for kids who want to be comedians?
my advice for kids who want to be comedians is to don't rush in to don't rush into posting the footage, because when you're starting out, you're not that good when you start out, and you need time to progress and to develop and to figure out what kind of comedian you want to be and what kind of comedy works for you. And a lot of times people will post footage of those early shows when that shouldn't be viewed by anybody else, because it's like serving a meal before it's cooked. You need time to, I think in today's culture, everybody's posting everything that they can as soon as they can. And I'm of the opinion that you can take time to prepare your art before it is ready for public consumption.
Can you tell us about any upcoming project or show?
Um, I have I'm doing a lot of ships. I do usually a couple of ships a month, and I do some land shows. Um, I'll be doing a theater on Saturday when I get back to Los Angeles, and a few clubs, and yeah, nothing. Nothing in particular comes to mind, but I'm always touring around, and if you want to check my website, if I'm going to be nearby you, I still play plenty of clubs and theaters on land.
Finally, it's time for our Turbo 10. 10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Number one, what is your favorite phrase to use?
My favorite phrase to use. My favorite phrase to use. I don't know if I have a favorite phrase to use. I feel like I'm messing up the rapid fire. I guess I would just say right on. Like when something makes me happy, or I feel like something hits the spot, I'll say right on.
Number two, what is one subject you'd love to learn more about?
One subject I would love to learn more about. Music. I am a huge fan of music, and I am always, I can't play music, but I am a huge fan of music, and I love reading musician biographies and documentaries, and I cannot get enough of just, I love music.
Number three, what is your go-to snack food?
My go-to snack food. I just bought it. Hold on. Airhead Bites, my favorite candy. They're not paying me to say this.
Number four, Who was your favorite comedian growing up?
My favorite comedian growing up was Steve Martin. Do you guys know who Steve Martin is?
I feel like I've heard of him.
He does more acting now, but in the 70s he was just doing stand-up comedy, and he got so big that he was selling out amphitheaters, and and then when at the top of his game, when he was selling out amphitheaters, he quit, and he said, I'm never doing stand-up again, and he just only did movies from then on. But when I was a kid, my mom bought his albums, his comedy albums, and that changed my life. It just listening to those albums, I memorized them. I would play them for all the neighbor kids, and I just, I didn't understand what I was hearing, but I knew that I was in love with it.
Number five. If you could teleport somewhere right now, where would you go?
If I could what?
Teleport.
If I could teleport somewhere right now, where would I go? I would teleport to Australia because I've never been to Australia, and I've heard that the comedy scene there is fantastic. And I've always wanted to check out the comedy scene there, but I've been busy with my own touring and stuff, and I just haven't gotten to yet. So I guess and that seems very far away and well worth the teleportation experience. So I'd say Australia.
You could have number six. You could have one superpower. What would it be?
If I could have one superpower, what would it be? I'd fly. I would be able to fly. Does everybody say fly?
Yes. Not everybody, but majority.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna be pretty typical and just say fly.
Number seven. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
My favorite cartoon as a kid. I had a lot of favorite cartoons when I was a kid. I loved He-Man. I loved Thundercats. I loved all the Looney Tunes. I liked Animaniacs. Um, yeah, what else?
You watched the reboots of them?
I showed them to my kids. Also, Voltron. Voltron was huge. Do you guys know what Voltron is?
No.
It was these uh, five like cats that came together to form one big robot. Anyway, it sounds weird, but that was my favorite when I was a kid. And I had the action figures and everything, and I should have kept them because they're worth millions now.
What is your favorite number eight? What is your favorite rainy day activity?
My favorite rainy day activity. I'm pretty simple. I like to just read a book, some fiction, some silly fiction, or I'll binge watch something. And I also like to cook. I'm a big if I'm at home and it's a rainy day, then I will spend all day making some weird soup.
Now, if you could have any three dinner guests, who would they be? No rules.
No, can live or dead?
No rules.
Wow.
It can be a fiction character too.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Who would I have dinner with if I could have dinner with anybody? I would say Willie Mays, baseball player. You guys know who Willie Mays is? Okay, Willie Mays, Dave Matthews, and Abraham Lincoln.
Number 10. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given?
The best piece of advice I was ever given was early on in when I was doing when I just started doing comedy. I went on the road with another comedian. His name was Rick, and I was I was nervous and I was a little bit stressed out before the show. And he sat me down and said, that he said, "You're forgetting to have fun." He goes, "Don't you realize how fun this is?" He goes, "Don't forget when you're walking on stage, remind yourself, just have fun." And I think of that piece of advice every time I go on stage. I just remind myself and I say a little prayer and I just tell myself to remind myself to just enjoy it, have fun. And that's great advice for life. For, enjoy the moment because it's not going to last forever, you know.
You were awesome. Thank you so much for doing. And thank you so much for spending time with us. I really hope I get to see another one of your shows. And can you take me with you?
I really hope that you guys get to see another one of my shows too. And it means the world to me that you asked me to join you on this show.